Hey guys, welcome back once again to the channel for another review. I've had a very good reading week and managed to read 2 whole books, which means you get 2 reviews. So how good for you? The reason that I read 2 whole books this week is because I got very excited because on Tuesday, the 22nd of May, this came out, Season of Storms by Andrzej Sapkowski. Yeah, this is a 2 decades removed, almost, sequel, or not even a sequel, really, it's a sidequel, as Mr. Sapkowski himself said, to the Witcher series. Obviously, been doing all the reviews of that this year, as I'm doing a reread currently. Thought I'd take a little break from the main saga. We've got to a good little stopping point, you know, Baptism of Fire now behind us, the final 2 books coming round the corner, Tower of Swallows being the next one, of course. So, Season of Storms takes place chronologically in between some of the short stories. In the original book, The Last Wish, I believe it takes place after most of the stories, but before the very first one, which is The Witcher, which is the one about the Striga and stuff. And obviously it takes place before The Voice of Reason as well. This is based on a throwaway line about something that happened in Geralt's past in the Sword of Destiny. I believe it's in the short story Something More, where he's visiting a monument to a great battle, and he remembers very briefly the name of one of the people that is inscribed on the monument, Leader Need. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. It might be Leiter Need. I don't know. So he remembers this person, which is this lady here on the front. He remembers just in like one sentence. He's like, oh, this happened between us one time. And Sapkowski, being Sapkowski, decided, you know, I'll write a novel about that. Why not? So this is an incredibly fun return to the Witcher world. I was really hesitant going into it because, as I say, Lady of the Lake originally published in 1999. It is now 2018. This was released in 2013. So it's only 14 years removed from the last entry in the series. But, you know, when you go back to something, you know, there's that question, is it worth doing? Do you have anything left to say? Is it going to be the same, or is it just going to feel like a weird, cheap cash grab? Obviously, in that time, The Witcher became a video game series. The Witcher 3 was right around the corner if it hadn't already come out. I think it hadn't come out yet. I'm not sure when Witcher 3 came out off the top of my head. You know, was it just a cash grab? That was my concern going in. Was it going to be lesser to the other books? And when I read the first couple of chapters, I was a bit nervous because the writing style didn't feel that familiar, and I was like, what's happening? But then I thought, actually, is it just a case that I wasn't in the right mindset for it? Because after the first 3 chapters, which are thankfully a lot shorter than Sapkowski is used to doing in novel form, after the first 3 chapters, it just felt like fitting like an old glove, you know. It really was a return to form, to what makes The Witcher so good. It has all the humour, all of the banter, all of the philosophizing, all of the clever turns of phrase that really make The Witcher something special for me. The story follows Geralt primarily. Ciri isn't involved, Yennefer's not really involved. This is a Geralt tale, basically. So if that's something you miss from reading the main saga, you know, maybe give this one a go, because it is focused solely on Geralt, as he goes to this town just to get some fish soup. That's the best thing. Like, he goes to this town just to get some fish soup, and a series of unfortunate mishaps happen to him, which is classic Geralt. Basically, he's finished up their job. He's like, I'm gonna go to this fancy restaurant and spend my money, get some fish soup. It's gonna be good. And then he ends up getting arrested for something. He gets arrested. He gets arrested because they think he's scamming people. So he gets arrested, and then when he gets out of prison, he finds that his Witcher swords have been stolen by someone who signed them out of storage after having stolen his receipt for, like, they stole his, like, cloakroom ticket. So he loses his swords. And now he just has to go on an adventure to get them back. And obviously, this just makes Geralt grumpy, which makes me happy, because grumpy Geralt is best Geralt. Obviously, we get a lot of intrigue along the way. There's a sorcerer conspiracy. There's something going on with the prince and the king of this, like, town that he's gone to. Dandelion correctly describes the king as the local kinglet, which is like a perfect description of this sort of person in the Witcher world, because I don't know if you might have realised this if you've read any of the other Witcher books, but it appears that there's a king for every, like, 10 square miles of land. So calling him a kinglet is just fantastic. There's really only, like, 4 main kings that you need to worry about. The rest are just, like, names. They're just some guy who just happens to be the person who makes the decisions in this particular spit of land. So the story goes on from there. It does sort of divulge into different subplots, and a lot of the time we're bouncing between the subplots. So we've got the sorcerer conspiracy, we've got the king's stuff, we've got the stuff with the missing swords, and we have this weird romance angle with Geralt and Lytanid, or Lytanid. So you've got those sort of 4 storylines, and we go between them occasionally, but very rarely do they ever interact, which sort of became a bit of a problem towards the later half of the book, because we returned to, like, referencing things that had happened maybe 100 pages before that hadn't come up in the space in between. So it was a little, if you weren't really paying attention, it could be a bit confusing. And if you separated those storylines out and just had them take place one after another, it probably wouldn't be as elegant, but it would be a lot easier to follow. It felt like what Sapkowski had done is written another short story collection that was all taking place around this one town, and then chopped them up and just sort of did, like, a chapter of this one, a chapter of this one, to stitch it into a novel. One thing that I was happy to see make a return was, like, the interludes. Now they're actually chapter titled as interludes. I guess he took pity on people that didn't understand that they were interlude bits before. But we have chapters, basically very short chapters from other people's POVs that are not Geralt. And those are always delightful, just to flesh out the world. We get a really fun letter to Lytanid from one of the other sorcerers that, like, starts off, dear Coral, which is her nickname. It's like, dear Coral, I'm happy to inform you that the Witchers finally come to visit us at our castle, and I'm really upset to inform you that he, within 1 hour, proved himself to be intolerable, and everyone hates him, including this one guy who can only be described as a ray of sunshine. And it's like, that's perfect. Thank you, Sapkowski, for delivering such wonderful interlude chapters that really added the humour. Like, the humour of The Witcher has always been present, but because this is like a side story with very low stakes compared to the actual saga, like, the humour was allowed to shine. Dandelion is there, and I love Dandelion. He's, like, one of my favourite characters. There's an excellent part where a sorcerer, like, says, like, I want to speak to Geralt alone. And Dandelion, like, protests this, and he's like, Geralt has no secrets from me. You can say whatever you want to Geralt in front of me. And the sorcerer just says, I know that, I learned a great many details about his personal life from your ballads. It's like, oh, Dandelion, why? Like, so Dandelion is like he's Geralt's best friend, but he's also like the biggest source of irritation for him because he's always putting his foot in it and he's always saying more than he should. Especially like just turning Geralt's life into a fantasy song, which just winds Geralt up, which is great. It's a great dynamic between the two characters, and I'm glad that Sapkowski, even 13 years having not written in this world, he still has it, man. And I would be happy to read any more books that he wants to put out in this saga. I think I saw an interview with him where he was saying like another book with Geralt in it is probably a given, but he doesn't know when it will happen. And he made a delightful analogy to boiling potatoes. He said, when I put potatoes in boiling water, I know in 20 minutes they're done. With a book, I have no idea. So that's absolutely fine with me. It could be another 5 years, it could be another 10 years, it could be like never that we get another Witcher book, but it doesn't make a massive difference because what we already have is a complete story. This is a self-contained story all on its own. You don't have to have read the other Witcher books to really get it. And I would actually say that if you read The Last Wish, I always recommend read The Last Wish first, just because it's the start of the saga. It's the introduction to all of these different characters. But this book really gives you like a whistle-stop tour of The Witcher's greatest hits in terms of characters, in terms of like cameos from characters that are in other stories. You'll get more out of this book if you've read the others first. But I would say you can definitely read this as like the first or second book that you read in the Witcher saga. Not be lost, really, because everything's well explained. I think this book is written with newcomers in mind, and I think anyone would enjoy it. If you're a fan of the games, if you're a fan of the books, if you're a fan of fantasy books in general, give Season of Storms a go because it is definitely worth your time. Rated it 4 stars just because some of the plot stuff could have been sort of consistently tied together a little bit better. But overall, phenomenal read. So happy I picked it up day one, and can't wait to go back and read Tower of Swallow and Lady of the Lake now. So that's it for this review. I will probably see you next week with another review of The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Already started it. Hopefully we'll be able to finish it this week. It is quite long and I am starting a new job, so we'll see how that works out for me. But until then, I will see you next time, and go and read the Witcher books because they're fucking great. See ya.